They saw what others could not. But at what cost? Dim the lights. Settle in. And let us step back in time, into the firelit shadows of a world half forgotten. You're deep inside the earth now. The cave breathes around you, walls slick with ancient moisture, the air thick with the scent of burning herbs, blood, and something older still. There's a fire in the center. It doesn't roar. It pulses. Like a heartbeat. Like it's alive. And the drumming, yes, there it is, slow, steady, as if echoing up from the bones of the mountain itself. Each beat pulling you deeper into the dark. You're not alone. A figure crouches by the fire. Cloaked in fur and feather. Bones dangle from cords tied to wrists and ankles. A crown of antlers catches the glow, casting jagged shadows across the stone walls. Walls marked with ochre hands, spirals, beasts dancing between the realms of myth and memory. The figure hums, not a melody, but something older than language. Their eyes are closed, lids fluttering. A tremor runs through them, as if some unseen force stirs inside. You realize they're whispering. But not to you. They speak to something beyond. This is no priest. No noble. No king. This is a shaman. A bridge between the living and the dead. Between waking and dream. Between the flesh and the flame. They saw what others could not. But at what cost? Stay close now. The fire's warm, but the shadows are watching. We're going deeper. Into a forgotten world of spirit, smoke, and sacrifice. And it begins here. The fire has dulled now, its orange glow turned to embers. Smoke curls in slow ribbons toward the mouth of the cave. Outside, the night is vast. You feel it pressing in, the breath of the forest, deep and damp, whispering secrets in a language you do not know. The figure before you, the one with the antlered headdress and the bones tied to their wrists, has gone quiet. The drum rests on their lap like a slumbering animal. But their eyes, half-shadowed, are still watching you. Still watching the world beyond the veil. You are not here by accident. And neither were they. This is a shaman. Not a priest, not a prophet, not a magician. Something older than all three. The word we use, shaman, has roots in the Tungusic language of Siberia. From Saman meaning, one who knows. But that's just a name someone gave it later. These figures, these wild-eyed wanderers between life and death, existed long before we knew what to call them. Shamans were born from fire and fear. From hunger, storm, illness, and death. When the world was raw and monstrous, when gods still roamed the forests, and the dead whispered from the roots of trees, someone had to listen. Someone had to answer. So they stepped forward, or were pulled forward, out of the tribe and into something else. Shamans weren't chosen by bloodline. No royal birthright. No inheritance. They were chosen by the unseen. Sometimes it came as sickness. Other times as madness. Sometimes they just vanished into the mountains, and came back with eyes that saw too much. You know that old saying. It's a fine line between madness and magic. They didn't walk that line. They danced on it. Naked, draped in smoke and feathers, howling in the moonlight. They were healers, yes. They mended wounds, set bones, ground herbs into thick green pastes, and stuffed them into gashes. They birthed babies and buried the dead. But they were also something more. They spoke to spirits. Some were the voices of ancestors, bone-thin grandmothers and long-dead warriors whose names had vanished from memory. Others were stranger. Things with claws and wings and too many eyes. Beasts that lived under the hills. Tricksters that smelled of moss and old blood. The shaman didn't just hear them. They answered. Let that settle for a moment. Imagine your world, your entire world, hinges on invisible forces. Storms that come without warning. Illness that spreads like smoke through the village. Animals that vanish. Babies that don't wake up. You can't control it. You can't explain it. But the shaman? The shaman knows why. They say, you were cursed. Or, the ancestors are angry. Or simply, I'll speak to the spirits tonight. And somehow you believe them. Because when they sit at the edge of the fire, bones in their hair and ash on their skin, humming in a voice that doesn't sound like theirs, you feel it. That they are not alone. That something is watching through their eyes. Shamans were not holy in the way we often imagine. They were holy the way a lightning storm is holy, beautiful, dangerous, unpredictable. People both feared and needed them. They lived at the edge of the village, or deep in the woods. Alone or with apprentices. Half in, half out. They belonged to no one. And that made them powerful. But let me show you something deeper. Close your eyes again. Let the firelight fade behind your eyelids. Let the drum return, that slow, pounding rhythm that mirrors your heartbeat. Let yourself walk with me, just a little farther. We step through the smoke. Out of this cave. Across ice-covered tundras. Into the snow-laced silence of ancient Siberia. Here, the reindeer herders call their shamans noiti. These are not soft, peaceful seers. These are bone-shaking, fire-eating, trance-diving mystics who carry knives in one hand and spirits in the other. One such noiti, old as frost, is said to have died 3 times in her life. Once from fever. Once from drowning. And once from a bear mauling that left her half paralyzed. Each time, she returned changed. She said the spirits carried her into the lower world, where souls are weighed on a scale made of wind. She said the wind told her secrets. Told her what was wrong with the chief's daughter. Told her what to burn, what to bury, and what not to say. The villagers stopped looking her in the eye after that. But they never disobeyed her again. Now walk with me farther south, down the spine of Asia, into Mongolia. Here, the bow or udgan, the male and female shamans, ride horses adorned with bells and colored streamers. They don robes of eagle feathers and wolf pelts. Their rituals are so intense, so wild, that outsiders often mistake them for possession. And maybe, they're not wrong. When a Mongolian shaman falls into trance, it's not a gentle drifting. It's a collapse. A violent seizure. Sometimes they scream. Sometimes they convulse. The sound of the drum builds like a storm. And then silence. And in that silence, they speak with voices not their own. They might channel a warlike ancestor who spits commands, or a gentle spirit who whispers cures and riddles. The tribe listens. Always listens. Because whatever speaks through the shaman, knows. Even in the Amazon, the rhythm is familiar. The ayahuasca ceremonies. The singing. The vomiting. The shaking. The opening of the veil. Different tools, different tongues, but always the same role. The one who sees. The one who dares. The one who walks where no one else will. And you begin to realize, don't you, that the shaman was never about religion. Not in the way we define it now. It was about survival. About mystery. About fear and wonder braided so tightly together they could never be pulled apart. They weren't priests. Priests have structure, temples, rules. Shamans had none of that. They had caves and feathers. Smoke and pain. Secrets passed mouth to mouth like old songs. They didn't serve gods. They served the unknown. And maybe that's why they still haunt our dreams. We've sanitized so much of the past. But not them. The image remains, a figure in the dark, whispering to fire. Covered in bones, smelling of blood and herbs and smoke. Watching you with eyes that see too much. They saw what others could not. But at what cost? Step softly now, the wind has changed. And somewhere in the distance, a drum begins again. A heartbeat not quite human. The journey is far from over. You feel it before you see it. The air is heavier now. Not colder, just denser, like the world is holding its breath. We've left the warmth of the cave behind. The embers are gone. The drumming has slowed to a low, distant thump, more like the echo of your own pulse in your ears than any drum you can point to. We're in a clearing. Trees all around, tall and watchful, branches creaking like old bones. Somewhere, a raven calls, once then twice. No answer. Just that call, hanging in the air like a question. And there, by that crooked tree with bark split like a wound, lies the shaman. Or rather, the not yet shaman. They're curled on the ground. Shivering. Burning. Fever pouring off them like smoke. Skin slick with sweat, eyes wild with something that doesn't see this world. They murmur, moan, claw at the earth as if trying to bury themselves or be reborn from it. You want to help. But we can't. Not yet. This is the beginning. And it's not meant to be easy. Because shamans, real ones, are not trained. They're taken. Let me explain. Across cultures, from the steppes of Siberia to the jungles of Peru, the stories repeat, over and over, like a heartbeat beneath the skin of the world. Shamans are not chosen by birthright or ceremony. They are chosen by suffering. Or perhaps more accurately, they are broken open. It begins with illness. Or madness. Or both. A young man is struck by a mysterious fever. He raves for days. Sees things in the smoke. Speaks languages no one taught him. A woman is thrown from her horse. Her leg breaks. Then her mind. She dreams of rivers that speak and trees that bleed. A child begins to hear voices in the wind. Animals stare too long at her. The elders look away. She is strange now. Marked. These aren't symptoms of disease, at least not to their people. These are the signs. The calling. To us, they might resemble epilepsy, psychosis, trauma, hallucination. But to the tribe? This is how the spirits speak. Not in polite whispers, but in screams. A shaman is not invited into their role. They are dragged into it. Their body becomes a battlefield. Their soul, a torn flag waving between this world and the next. And it's not just metaphor. Some initiates are driven to the edge of death. Some don't come back. That's part of the risk. Part of the cost. Let me tell you a story. Among the Yakut people of Siberia, they speak of the shaman sickness. It strikes without warning. The afflicted person becomes reclusive, starves themselves, laughs and cries without reason. And then the dreams begin. One man, we'll call him Mikhail, was a hunter. Strong, steady, sane. Until the winter of his 32nd year. He went into the forest for elk. Didn't come back for days. When he returned, he was barefoot, his clothes torn, eyes wide and unblinking. He said he'd spoken with his grandmother. She'd been dead for 10 years. He said she gave him a bone drum and told him to follow the raven to the stone that sings. His village tried to treat him. Herbs, prayers, warmth. Nothing worked. He wandered the forest for weeks, sleeping in the snow, eating bark and roots. They found him crouched by a frozen river, carving symbols into the ice with his fingernails. He was broken. Changed. But when he came back the final time, he knew things. He knew who was sick before the fever came. He knew where the elk would pass. He spoke of dreams where the spirits taught him songs. And when he beat the drum, people listened. He had been undone and remade. This is the shamanic initiation, a death that isn't death. A descent into chaos, into madness, into pain, that returns not just a survivor, but a seer. It echoes across the globe. In the Amazon, the Shipibo believe that real shamans are called by the plant spirits. Ayahuasca is not just a medicine, it's a test. A trial. The first few ceremonies are often filled with darkness, vomiting, panic, terror. One shaman described it like this. They take your body apart, piece by piece, They boil you down to your bones. Then they ask you, do you still want to see? Among the Inuit, a prospective Angakik shaman must be visited by a helping spirit in a dream or vision. But not all spirits are kind. Some come with sharp teeth. Some drag you under the ice. And only if you survive the drowning are you worthy to begin learning. The Sotho people of southern Africa believe in a process called the Kathwasa, an ancestral calling that manifests in illness. The sufferer begins to dream of lightning, of snakes, of floods. They feel overwhelmed, isolated. Only through acceptance, ritual, and mentorship can they transform. It's not unique to one place. It's human. Or perhaps, it's older than human. Because this story, of breaking, of dying, of being remade, it's the same story at the heart of every myth, every legend. Odin hanging from the world tree for 9 days. Jesus in the wilderness. The Buddha beneath the tree of suffering. Persephone in the underworld. The descent is always the beginning. The shaman simply lives it more literally than most. And maybe that's why we've always feared them. Because they've seen something we haven't. Because they've gone somewhere we pray we never need to. And returned with fire in their eyes. Now come closer. The fevered shaman we saw earlier? Their body still trembles. But look, something's shifted. Their breathing has steadied. Their eyes are half-lidded, but clear. They are muttering something soft, rhythmic, ancient. It's a chant. A name, perhaps. Or a path. The drum picks up again, not from outside, but inside your chest. Thump. Thump. They are rising now. Not as they were, but as something new. Something sacred. You watch them straighten. Don the cloak of feathers and bone. Their skin still marked with illness, but now it glows faintly in the moonlight. Like they've been through fire, and carry its light within them. This is the end of their initiation, and the beginning of ours. For now, with them, we go deeper still. Into the realm of ritual. Into the sound of the drum. Into the tools of the trade. Don't blink. The spirits are listening. The shaman stands now. Unsteady at first, like a newborn deer. But with every breath, the wind steadies them. With every heartbeat, the silence shifts. You feel it, don't you? The air crackles around them, not with lightning, but with intention. It's the kind of tension that lives right before a storm, or a story. And you are part of it. Their hands move slowly, with reverence, gathering the tools they will need, not for battle, but for something far more dangerous, the journey. Let's look closer. This isn't a temple. It's a clearing in the woods. Leaves crunch underfoot. Smoke curls from a small fire made of pine and sage and something acrid that bites your throat. There are no golden chalices here. No polished altars. Everything is raw. Alive. Smelling of blood, bark, and bone. The shaman kneels before a bundle of objects. Each one strange yet familiar. As if you've seen them in a dream you forgot upon waking. They begin to dress. First, the cloak. It's not made of silk or linen. It's a patchwork, stitched with scraps of hide, woven feathers, beads carved from bone, teeth from animals long dead. It smells of earth, sweat, and something older than both. Every piece tells a story. This feather? Plucked from a hawk seen during a vision. That tooth? Taken from a bear that appeared in a dream 3 winters ago. The beads? Some carved from reindeer bone, others from the knuckle bones of ancestors. This isn't fashion. It's a language. A conversation with the unseen. Then the headdress. A crown of sorts. But not for royalty. For travelers between realms. Antlers arch upward, worn smooth by age and use. Strips of leather hang down, some with small bells that chime with even the faintest movement. Others are adorned with claws, shells, bits of colored thread. When they lower it over their head, their shape changes. You see it, don't you? They are no longer quite human. Not quite animal either. Something in between. Now the drum. Ah, the drum. The heartbeat of the ritual. They lift it carefully, both sacred and familiar. The frame is round, carved from a single piece of bent wood. The hide stretched across it is taut, stained with smoke and symbols. Some drawn in ochre. Some carved. Others? Burned into the skin with a glowing coal. Each mark is a map. Not of the land, but of realms. The upper world. The middle. The deep, dangerous lower. The shaman holds the drum close to their chest, like a lover or a lifeline. Then, softly, begins to strike it with a beater wrapped in wool. Thump. Thump. Not loud. Not fast. Just steady. Like your pulse. Like the earth's breath. Like the sound the world makes when you finally get quiet enough to hear it. And suddenly, the clearing begins to change. Not visibly. Not all at once. But the air shifts. The fire bends toward the drumbeat. The shadows deepen. Your skin prickles. You feel it in your teeth. Now the smoke. The shaman feeds herbs to the fire, mugwort, sage, juniper, and something sweet and bitter all at once. It stings the eyes. Clears the lungs. Purifies the space, yes, but more importantly it opens the doors. This smoke is not incense. It's a key. To what? That depends on who you ask. Some say it wards off malevolent spirits. Others say it invites the helpful ones. Either way, it moves with purpose, curling like fingers, slithering like serpents, rising like questions to gods that don't speak our language. You're starting to feel it now, aren't you? The pull. The shift. The soft unfurling of a world just behind this one. Other tools come next. A pouch of stones. Not just any stones, ones that shimmer faintly, or carry the fossilized spiral of a shell long dead. Each one a memory. A story. A guide. A small blade, obsidian, sharp as regret. Not for cutting flesh, usually, but for carving symbols, for mixing salves, for rituals that demand blood. And yes, some do. A rattle made of dried gourd and seeds. When it shakes, it doesn't just make noise. It calls. And a staff, carved from a lightning-struck tree, wrapped in sinew, topped with a bird's skull. You wonder if it's symbolic. The shaman would laugh. Everything is symbolic. And also, nothing is. Because here's the truth, the tool is not what matters. The intention is. The drum doesn't open the spirit world. The shaman does. The smoke doesn't carry the prayers. The shaman sends them. The cloak, the crown, the blade, the rattle, these are just mirrors. Extensions. Echoes of the shaman's own inner fire. They are the real ritual. Their breath. Their pain. Their stories. Their scars. You watch them now as the ritual begins. The drumbeat quickens. The fire leaps. The shaman spins, chants, hums. Their voice is no longer alone. It harmonizes with something deeper. The wind sings with them. The trees lean closer. A fox watches from the shadows. An owl blinks once, twice, then disappears. The rhythm climbs, slowly, then faster. You see them sweat. You see their hands shake. But they do not falter. Their eyes roll back. Their body stiffens. Then bends. And when they fall to the ground, it is not from weakness. It is a crossing. They are no longer here. They are walking the other path. Where? You can't follow. Not yet. But you can feel the door opening. Smell the fire beyond. Hear the laughter of things not human. And when they speak again, when they return, voice hoarse, eyes glittering with some impossible knowledge, you will know that the ritual worked. Because the world is not quite the same anymore. And neither are you. Stay close now. Because where we go next, there are no maps. Only visions. Only songs sung in silence. Only the thinnest of threads between body and soul, between dream and death. The drum still beats. The spirits are waiting. The drum is still beating. Not in your ears anymore, but in your blood. Slow. Heavy. Like a call from inside the marrow of your bones. The fire flickers lower. The smoke curls tighter. And the shaman is not here. Their body lies in the circle, still, eyes shut, lips moving in silent words. But they are not with us anymore. They've stepped through. And we, if we are brave, will follow. But how? Not through the sky. Not by dream alone. No. The path they walk is stranger. Rooted in earth, yet touching stars. Open not by door or drum alone, but by plants. You've felt them before, haven't you? Maybe on the edge of a fever dream. Or that strange stillness in the woods when the trees feel like they're listening. That whisper in the back of your mind that says, there is more. The shamans knew it too. And they found a way to listen. Let's begin in Siberia. Cold. Endless. Ice-breathing land, where the wind speaks in riddles. Here, the fly agaric mushroom grows, bright red with white speckles. You've seen it in fairy tales, yes? That toadstool cap straight from a children's book. Harmless, whimsical. But here's the secret, it's not. The fly agaric is psychoactive. Potent. Dangerous if misused. But to the reindeer herders of Siberia, it was more than a mushroom. It was a key. They'd dry the caps over fire. Crush them. Brew them. Or, more strangely, drink the urine of those who'd already consumed it, because the psychoactive compounds pass through the body still active, and the process removes some of the toxicity. Yes. You heard right. Shamans would drink the urine of others, often their own, because it allowed them to ride the mushroom's vision without being poisoned. Why? Because when it took hold, it lifted them. The world would melt. The sky would pulse with color. The drumbeat would fracture into light. And suddenly, they were no longer in the cold, white world of man, but flying. Literally flying. They described soaring through the sky on reindeer back, watching spirits dance below, speaking to ancestors wrapped in snow, glimpsing the structure of the universe itself. Past. Present. Future. All braided together like strands of reindeer sinew. The spirit world opened, and they walked in. But the price was steep. The trip could last for hours. Days. The body weakened. The mind stretched thin. Some returned changed forever. Some didn't return at all. But it wasn't just the cold lands. Let's move now. South. Hot. Humid. The air thick with the breath of the jungle. Welcome to the Amazon. Here, the shamans drink ayahuasca. A bitter brew made from the Banisteriopsis caapi vine and the Psychotria viridis leaf. Separately, they are inert. Together, a chemical key. One opens the stomach. The other opens the soul. They call it La Purga, because it cleanses. Oh, does it cleanse? Within minutes, the body rebels, vomiting, shaking, sweating. But that's just the beginning. That's the gate. Then come the visions. Not hallucinations. Not exactly. The shamans are careful with their words. They don't imagine things. They see them. Snakes made of stars. Jaguars with human eyes. Trees that breathe and hum and remember. The dead, walking through the jungle with feet that don't touch the earth. Entire mythologies bloom in minutes. The songs the shamans sing, Icaros, are not performances. They're tools. Weapons. Maps. They guide the vision. Tame it. Steer it through the storm. Because ayahuasca is not always kind. It shows you what you fear. What you've forgotten. What you've buried. It drags your shadow self into the firelight and says, "Look, learn, live. And when you come back, if you do, you are never the same. Cross the oceans now. Come to West Africa. Hear the drums echo through the night faster now. The air is electric. Here, Iboga rules, a root bark with visions deeper than dream. Used by the Bwiti in Gabon, it is not a soft teacher. It is surgical. Initiates lie still for hours, sometimes days, in absolute darkness. What they see is everything. Their ancestors, their own sins, the moment of their birth, the hour of their death. They return with trembling voices and stories they cannot quite explain. They are not just tripping. They are being rebuilt. And it is not only men. Many shamans were women, midwives of both body and soul. They brewed, chewed, sang. Their visions came with blood, with breath, with the screams of birth and the stillness of death. Even in North America, peyote played its role, small, bitter buttons that brought long nights of fire, prayer, and visions beneath the stars. The spirits they met there were not all kind. Some were tricksters. Some were guides. All were real. And always, the cost was high. Because these journeys were not for pleasure. They were for healing, for knowing, for finding lost souls, for negotiating with the spirits that made the crops grow, the babies breathe, the hunters return. The shaman used the plant not to escape, but to confront. To enter the wound and come out with the medicine. And here's the strangest thing. Across all these cultures, divided by continents, languages, gods, they came back with similar stories. A world beneath this one. A world above. Spirit animals. Singing trees. Rivers made of memory. How? Coincidence? Biology? Or is there really something else? Something these plants let us see? You feel it now. The smoke is thicker again. The air pulsing. You look at the shaman's still form, and you know they are not here. Not in this clearing. Not in that body. They are walking. And in their hand? Not a blade. Not a book. But a vine. A mushroom. A root. A bitter brew passed down for generations. A whisper from the earth. And on their lips? A song too old to translate. Too beautiful to forget. And if you listened close enough, you might hear it too. The plants opened the sky. And the shaman walked through. But now, what did they find on the other side? What did they see in the land of spirits? And what saw them back? Follow closely. Because next, we enter the world that waits behind all things. The spirit realm. And nothing there wears its true face. The fire has dimmed to a faint, glowing coal. The shaman's body is still unmoving in the circle, but around them, everything has changed. The air no longer smells just of herbs and smoke. It carries something else, metallic, sweet, strange. A scent like rain on old stone. Like breath on glass. Like memory. They are gone. Not in body, but in soul. They have left the middle world, the realm of breath and bark and bone, and entered what every culture, in its own tongue, calls the other side. We call it the spirit world. But that's not really what it is. It's not one place. It's three. Upper world. Middle world. Lower world. 3 layers of existence. Not stacked like a ladder, but layered like skin over muscle over bone. You don't climb or fall to get there. You shift. Like sliding sideways through a mirror. Let's begin with the middle world, because that's where you are now. And where the spirits live closest to the waking world. This realm mirrors ours, same trees, same rivers, same hills. But distorted. Dreamlike. As if reality was reflected in a pool that's been stirred. Here, the dead linger. Ghosts of the recently departed. Ancestors. Echoes of things half remembered. They appear in strange ways. a fox with your mother's voice, a tree that sighs in your father's rhythm, a child-shaped shadow holding a glowing flower. Some seek peace, others don't. There are spirits of place, guardians of springs, of forests, of stones. You must greet them, honor them, pass through their territories with respect. Forget, and you may lose more than your way. The middle world is not evil, but it is dangerous, because it feels so close to the world you know, until suddenly it isn't. Now deeper, the shaman descends to the lower world. This is no hell. That's a Christian idea. This world is older, stranger, and it is not a punishment. It is a source. Here lies the root of things, the bones of the world, the spirits of animals, the first fire, the great-grandmother trees, the river that remembers every soul it has ever touched. The path down is never the same. Sometimes it's a hole in the earth, a well, a hollow tree, a cave that goes too deep. Sometimes it begins with a fall. The shaman might feel their soul pulled downward, plunging through earth, stone, shadow, until they land in a world lit not by sun, but by something older. Here, spirits appear as animals. Wolves with silver eyes. Snakes that speak in riddles. Beasts with no mouths that still sing. These are guides, allies, tricksters. Some are teachers, showing the shaman how to heal, what roots to use, which songs to sing. Others are tests. A woman with no face. A tree that weeps blood. A tunnel where every step forward ages you a year. Nothing is literal. Everything is a lesson. And always, always, there is a cost. To speak with these spirits, the shaman must give something: blood, breath, a memory, a name. Because the lower world does not give freely. It remembers everything. And now, up through the soul, through the smoke, through the crack in the sky, to the upper world. Here, the laws of physics, time, and body dissolve. The upper world is radiant, but not soft. It is not heaven. It is clarity. Here dwell beings of light, ancestors long gone, teachers not born of flesh. Some appear as human, glowing with knowledge too vast for words. Others take no form at all, only a presence, a pressure, a warmth in the chest, a vibration in the spine. The shaman may be offered insight here, visions of what must be done, messages for the village, warnings, or gifts, but they must earn it. The upper world demands humility. To carry knowledge back from here is to carry fire. It can burn the shaman if they are not strong enough, or pure enough, or ready. But when they are, the vision is blinding. One shaman described it as a song that sang her. Another said it was like becoming wind, not hearing truth, but being it. And then, the return. Always harder than the going. The soul must travel back, through the lights, through the roots, through the trap-laden paths of the middle world, and re-enter the body. And here is the danger. Sometimes, the body doesn't fit anymore. Sometimes, the soul returns too changed. The eyes open, but the voice is different. The hands twitch like remembering another shape. The shaman wakes, but does not always fully come back. Still, they sit up. They breathe. They whisper something in a voice not quite theirs. The ritual is complete. But what they saw, that stays with them. Some draw it. Symbols etched into wood, onto skin, into dirt. Spirals. Eyes. Hands reaching up from roots. Birds with human faces. Some sing it. A new song never heard before, but somehow known. Some say nothing, because language cannot carry what they've seen. But you see it in their gaze. That far-off flicker. That moment when they pause mid-sentence, as if listening to something just behind the wind. That's the spirit world still whispering. And it never truly stops. You're still here, watching, heart pounding. You felt it, didn't you? Not just the beauty, the terror. Because this world, the spirit world, isn't just visions and comfort. It's deeper than dream. It's realer than flesh. It's the place behind the place. The one that watches you when you're alone. The one that calls your name when no one else is near. And now that we've touched it, we need to talk about what it cost. Because power never comes free. And some spirits? They don't want to be friends. Next, we'll walk the edges, the taboos, the fear, the isolation. Because shamans were not saints. They were dangerous. And they knew it. The shaman breathes. They are back. Their body is here, crouched beside the dying fire, shoulders hunched, chest heaving as if the air has changed weight. You can feel it too. Something has settled in the clearing, not peace, exactly, but stillness. Like the forest is watching. They don't speak right away. They don't have to. Because even without words, you know what just happened. You watched their spirit leave. Saw it vanish into a realm of impossible light and hunger and memory. And now you watch them return, not broken, but reassembled. Different. The silence stretches. The fire crackles. Somewhere, a raven cackles in the distance. And suddenly you wonder, what now? What happens when a person returns from that place? When they walk between the worlds? Do they go home? Do they eat breakfast like everyone else? Do they plow the fields and chase their chickens and gossip by the well? The answer, whispered in every culture, every tongue, from Arctic tundras to equatorial jungles, is no. Not exactly. Because something changes after initiation. After the drum. After the journey through smoke and spirit and self. You don't come back a villager. You come back a boundary. A threshold. A walking taboo. That's the shaman's true title in many ways. Half loved. Half feared. Always watched. Never quite trusted. Because once you've spoken with the dead, people stop inviting you to dinner. You might save a child from fever one day, and be blamed for another's death the next. You're respected, yes. Revered even. But only from a distance. Your hut is at the edge of the village, remember? Not in its heart. Your path is worn, but rarely walked by others. Because people know, you see things they don't want to see. And you know things they'd rather not know. Let me show you what that looked like. In Siberia, a shaman may be forbidden from touching iron. Metal was too fixed, too dead. Spirits couldn't pass through it. To carry metal was to close a door. So the shaman walked barehanded, their tools made from bone, wood, hide, all things that remembered breath. In Mongolia, shamans avoided certain foods, horse meat, or garlic, or salted flesh, during periods of spirit work. Some were forbidden from eating at all for days before a ritual. Fasting, they said, cleared the body for passage. An empty stomach made a better vessel. In the Amazon, during ayahuasca ceremonies, strict taboos ruled. No sex. No meat. No fermented drink. No anger. The spirit of the vine was easily offended, and if you were impure, if you carried lust, hunger, bitterness, the visions could turn dangerous. They could punish you. Even daily life had boundaries. Many shamans could not marry. Others had spouses, but rarely shared a bed. Some slept alone, or outside, or with one foot always turned toward the forest. They lived on the border, not just between worlds, but between the human and the not quite. They were human. Of course. But not fully. And the people around them sensed it. They flinched when the shaman laughed too loud. Whispered when they walked past. Watched their shadows, to see if it moved the wrong way. And perhaps the hardest part? The loneliness. To carry that kind of knowing, the kind born of visions and terror and gods that whisper in the bones, is to live apart. Even when you're surrounded, you are other. Some shamans kept pets, not cats or dogs, but snakes, ravens, frogs, animals thought to carry messages. You see them crouched outside the hut, blinking slowly, watching the same horizon their master dreams about at night. Some shamans wore bells, not for fashion, but as a warning. I am coming. I am not like you. Step carefully. But not all fear was passive. Some became targets. When the crops failed. When babies died. When rain didn't fall or fell too hard. When war came. Someone had to be blamed. And who better than the one who spoke to spirits? Many shamans were persecuted, hunted, driven out, accused of sorcery, of betrayal, of sleeping with devils, even within their own tribes. The line between healer and curse-bringer? Razor thin, and easy to cross, especially when people were afraid. Some cultures believed that shamans could steal souls, not just save them. That they could cause illness. That they could send bad dreams, wither crops, turn a man's blood to ice with a glance. And to be honest, some did. Because being a shaman wasn't sainthood. It was power. And power can be twisted. But we'll speak more of that soon. First, we must understand the rules they followed. The strange, sacred boundaries they navigated every day. Because to survive as a shaman wasn't just about strength, or skill, or spirit. It was about balance. Knowing when to speak. When to be silent. When to walk away from a dying man because his spirit had already left. Knowing when to take a bone from a corpse, and how to return it so the soul wouldn't wander. Knowing which tree wept when it was cut, and which one forgave you. Knowing how to cross a threshold without being followed. Because spirits don't always stay where they're invited. And here's the final truth. Every culture had its own taboos. But they all meant the same thing. You walk with the dead. We honor you. But we don't want your footprints inside our homes. And the shaman? They understood. They accepted. Because to be a bridge is to be walked on. To be a mirror is to be looked through. To carry the sacred is to carry solitude. And they carried it well. Until it was time to step back into the circle. To pick up the drum. To light the fire. To return to the people who feared them. And save them anyway. But the next time that fire burned, there would be more than healing. Because some rituals, some rites, called for blood. And not just animal blood. No. Next, we enter the rites of death. The chants. The sacrifice. The moments when the line between sacred and savage blurred. And the spirits demanded more. The wind shifts. You feel it before you hear it. A low, rising note in the back of your neck, like the sky inhaling. The fire spits once, twice. Sparks rise like restless spirits. And the shaman does not speak. Instead, they kneel. Not to pray. To prepare. The village watches from the edge of the clearing. Children half hidden behind cloaks. Elders gripping charms in their fists. Even the chief says nothing. Because tonight's ritual is not for healing, or for birth, or for dreams. Tonight, the spirits have asked for more. There's a word that slips between teeth when no one thinks they're being heard: sacrifice. And yes, that word carries weight. Modern minds recoil from it. We picture cruelty, bloodlust, superstition twisted into violence. But here, in this ancient moment, in the rhythm of this fire and chant and silence, it is not cruelty. It is currency. The world the shaman walks in, the world behind this one, does not run on prayers alone. It demands exchange. If you ask for rain, you must give water. If you ask for life, you must offer death. Not out of malice, out of balance. And so the offering is made. Let's be clear, not all sacrifice is blood. Sometimes it is bread, milk, grain scattered on the ground for the spirits of the forest. Sometimes it is music, an all-night drumming session until hands blister and hearts race. Sometimes it is solitude, days in a cold cave, fasting, dreaming, sweating out the sickness of another. But sometimes... Yes. Blood is asked? A rooster, its throat opened under moonlight, feathers scattered to read omens. A goat, smoke rising from the fire as fat crackles, the smell thick with prayer and ash. And in the oldest tales, whispered, never written, a human. Not casually. Not easily. But in times of great crisis. Famine. War. Plague. The shaman did not choose this lightly. It broke them, too. There is a story from the forests of pre-Columbian Mesoamerica. A village plagued by drought. The shaman fasted, chanted, offered maize, jade, everything they could. But the gods, or something older, would not answer. Until they did. And the dream came, like smoke. Give us one who has never known death. The village chose a child. The shaman wept as they painted the child's face. Sang songs older than guilt. Held the blade with shaking hands. And when the blood hit the earth, the sky cracked open. Rain fell before the dawn. Do you think that shaman ever slept again? In Siberia, there are chants of reindeer sacrifice. The animal anointed, sung to, its death marked with sacred honor. They believed the spirit of the animal would ride ahead of the shaman in the lower world, guiding the way, protecting against tricksters, carrying messages. In the Amazon, it wasn't just animals. It was death itself that was offered through ordeal, through madness, through the consuming of powerful brews that brought the body to the edge. Every sacrifice, of blood, of time, of sanity, was a door. And each door opened into a darker room. Because the spirit world is not polite. It doesn't take what you give. It takes what you mean. You can't fake it. The shaman knew this. Every cut they made, every fire they lit, every word they whispered, it had to come from the soul. Or the spirits would know. And they would come for the shaman instead. So the rituals were precise. Bones placed just so. Symbols drawn in ash across the chest. Songs that must be sung exactly right, or not at all. In West Africa, during death rituals, some shamans danced with skulls. Not props. Relics. Carriers of memory. They believed the dead needed to be guided, that without the proper song, they might wander, angry and lost. So they danced. For hours. Days. Until the spirit moved on. And if it didn't, the land suffered. The people fell sick. The dreams turned sour. So you see, it wasn't about blood. It was about balance. The shaman was the scale. And sometimes, to keep the world steady, you needed to place a life on one side of it. That doesn't make it easy. It makes it terrible. And terribly sacred. Back at the fire, the ritual is ending. Tonight, the offering was small, herbs, breath, a bird whose soul has already flown. The shaman stands. Not proud. Not triumphant. Spent. You watch them look to the sky. Not in hope. In question. Because every sacrifice asks, was it enough? And the answer never comes all at once. But for now, the wind has stilled. The fire is calm. And the people are walking back to their huts in silence. The shaman is alone again. And tomorrow, the spirits will ask something new. But tonight, in the space where firelight fades and darkness hums, the world is quiet. And that quiet is everything. Next, we travel across the world, to see how different peoples shape their shamans, and how, despite oceans and mountains, they all walk the same path. One of smoke. And fire, and the trembling edge of vision. Let's lift our gaze now from the dying embers in that ritual clearing. We've watched the shaman walk through spirit and sacrifice. Now we walk with them, far, far beyond the edge of their village. beyond their forest, across oceans, mountains, deserts. Because though the names may change, the role does not. Smoke drifts the same way across continents, and the drumbeat, slow, steady, ancient, always finds its echo. The night deepens, and the stars above the shaman's village blur slightly with the heat of the fire. You feel the pulse of it still, but your feet are moving now. You and I, we're traveling, not in time, but in rhythm. Following that same beat, that same whisper, to see how the world, in its infinite difference, answered the same sacred need. In Siberia, where the word shaman was first spoken by the Tungus people, the land is cold, and the spirits colder still. The shaman there, often called Noidi among the Sami, or Bo among other Siberian tribes, rides into trance on a reindeer-hide drum, its surface painted with maps of the universe. The journey begins with chanting, then the drum, then possession. The spirits don't just visit, they enter. The shaman's voice deepens or changes pitch entirely. They speak in the tongue of the dead. They imitate animals. Their body, convulsing with trance, becomes the vehicle. And when they return, breathless and hollow-eyed, they bring warnings, answers, omens. But never for free. Now south. Mongolia. Windswept steppes. Sky so vast it feels like another ocean. Here, the Bo or Udgan, male and female shamans, wear long robes and crowns made of horsehair, feathers, antlers. Their drums are loud, sharp, shaped like shields. In this land of warriors, spirits are often ancestral, powerful, proud, demanding. Shamans do not beg these spirits. They negotiate. They bargain. Some even challenge them in ritual combat. One Mongolian tale speaks of a shaman who dueled a wind spirit using only his voice. For hours, he sang and screamed and howled, until the wind broke, and brought rain to the starving fields. Across the sea now, to the rainforests of Amazonia. Here the world breathes differently. Thick with green, dripping with life and death in equal measure. The ayahuasqueros of Peru and Brazil drink their brew in flickering candlelight. Ayahuasca is not used lightly. It is teacher, serpent, mother, and mirror all at once. Under its influence, the shaman sees into the body, not just bones and organs, but into pain itself. A mother's grief. A hunter's shame. They sing ikaros, sacred songs shaped by what the plants teach them. The songs are not memorized. They are learned during trance, from the voices of leaves and rivers. One shaman described it like this: "The plants sing to me. I listen. Then I remember what they said." Illness in this world is often spirit misalignment, a lost piece of the soul. And the shaman's job? To bring it back. Travel westward, far west. North America. Cold plains and red desert. Here, among many indigenous tribes, shamans are known by different names: medicine people, singers, dreamers, two spirits. Some travel with the help of peyote, others with fasting, others still through dance that lasts until collapse. Among the Lakota, the Uwipi ceremony binds the shaman in a blanket and rope. They are placed in darkness, alone. And in that darkness, they call to the spirits. Lights flash. Voices are heard. Objects move without touch. Not tricks. Not illusion. But testimony, from entire rooms of witnesses who speak of miracles that do not feel like magic. Now south again, West Africa. Here, the rhythm changes. The drum is not just a tool. It is a companion. The babalaos, the diviners, the na-na, they speak to the ancestors through cowrie shells, bones, chants, and music that enters the spine and refuses to leave. Spirits in these cultures are not distant. They are family. They live in the walls, the wind, the bloodline. The shaman's role is not to ascend into vision, but to listen well. To be the ears of the village when the dead have something to say. And the dead always have something to say. East now, to India, the Himalayas, and Nepal. Here the shamans are often women. Their trances are wild, ecstatic, uncontrollable. Possession is common, gods speaking through human mouths. Eyes roll back. Words pour out in ancient dialects. Sometimes the deity speaks for hours, answering the prayers of the crowd, choosing who will be healed and who will not. The shaman, when they awaken, remembers nothing. But the people remember. And they bring offerings next time. Every time. Down into Indonesia, the Philippines, Papua, the Babalan, Dukuan, Balian. Their magic is quieter, but no less powerful. They divine with dreams. They heal with touch. They pass knowledge not through books, but breath, whispered recipes, remembered incantations, body memory. These islands believe in ancestral spirits called Anaito, or Tao. If you forget them, they let you know. Headaches. Accidents. Famine. The shaman's task is to remember on behalf of everyone else. And finally, look to the Arctic. Greenland. Alaska. The Inuit and Gakik travels not with drugs or fire, but breath. They use isolation, starvation, snowblindness. They listen to the ice. Some return with stories of spirits shaped like icebergs, slow and ancient, who teach them whale songs. Others return with silence in their eyes. Not dead. Just distant. As if some part of them still walks in the cold where the sun doesn't rise for months at a time. And what's the thread? What ties the Mongolian horse shaman to the ayahuasquero in the jungle? The Babalan to the Arctic and Gakik? It is this: they all walk between. They walk between the living and the dead, between body and spirit, between sickness and healing, between madness and meaning. They dance on the edge of known and unknown. They speak in riddles because the truth is too big for straight lines. They wear feathers, bones, antlers, beads, not because it looks sacred, but because it is a language. Each item means something. Each sound does something. Each ritual moves something unseen. Across the globe, without knowing each other, these shamans built the same bridges. They entered trance. They sang the world into balance. They kept the sacred thread from snapping. And that is no coincidence. It's a memory. A pattern. A song older than civilization. But there's one more thread we must pull now, the one many fear to name. Because some shamans? They walked between not just life and death, but between man and woman, between the fixed and the fluid. And in that liminal space, they found something sacred. Something others feared to look at. But we will. Because to understand shamanism fully, we must understand the sacred other. The journey continues seamlessly. The path winding deeper now into the personal, the intimate, the truth wrapped in paradox. The fire still flickers behind us, but the next story begins in the silence between roles, the space between what is and what should not be. The shaman does not just cross between worlds. Sometimes they are the boundary themselves. The fire crackles behind you, dimming but not dying. The night has grown heavier, soaked with all we've seen, the spirits, the visions, the rituals. But now the smoke carries a different scent. Not just of herbs or ash, but of change. Of contradiction. Of transformation. You sense it, don't you? The presence of someone standing at the edge of the firelight. Not man, not woman, or perhaps both. Dressed in garments that shimmer and clash, stitched from symbols rather than seams. Their face is painted, not to hide, but to reveal what most would look away from. This is the shaman we meet now. The one who lives in the in-between. Across countless cultures, the figure of the shaman has always been tied to the liminal, the thresholds between life and death, illness and healing, night and dawn. But some also walked between another kind of boundary, that of gender. And in doing so, they unlocked a different kind of power. In the traditional Lakota Sioux worldview, there are not two genders, but four. The winked, literally. To be like a woman was a male-bodied person who took on feminine roles. But more than that, The winged was often considered spiritually potent. Some became shamans. Some became visionaries. They were not mocked, they were consulted. Feared, perhaps, but as one fears lightning or a sacred fire. Not because it is unnatural, but because it touches something beyond the natural. Travel to the Philippines, where the Babaylan, powerful female shamans, played crucial roles in society before colonial interference. But here's the thread often forgotten. Many Babaylan were biologically male who dressed, spoke, and lived as women. Not as performance. Not as disguise. As sacred transformation. They believed that the capacity to cross spiritual realms was enhanced by crossing gender lines, that to step outside one's assigned form was to better reflect the mutability of the spirit world itself. And in Siberia, among the Chukchi and other peoples, some shamans were what anthropologists called gender transcendent. A male-bodied shaman might wear women's clothes, speak in a high register, perform women's tasks, not because they identified as female in the modern Western sense, but because they were inhabiting a spiritual duality. Some claimed to have been instructed by the spirits to do so. Others said it happened after visions. But always, it was accompanied by increased power. Their people believed them to be closer to the gods. Let's be clear, this was not tolerated out of benevolence. It was respected out of reverence. The idea was simple and radical. To transcend gender was to transcend form itself. And those who did so were not breaking rules. They were upholding deeper ones, the rules of spirit, not flesh. You feel it now, don't you? That old tightness in the modern mind that wants to sort things, to name and file and box. But shamans laughed at boxes. They broke them. Because the spirits do not care what body you were born in. They care what you carry. What you sacrifice. What you see. Among the Bugis people of Indonesia, there are 5 acknowledged genders. Not 2. Not even 3. 5. And one of them, the Bisu, is considered neither male nor female. They are the androgynous priests, the ritual keepers. The ones who bless and curse. The ones who see both the beginning and the end. In their cosmology, the gods themselves exist beyond gender, and the Bisu reflect that divinity. Their very existence is an echo of the sacred. Now imagine how this role, so honored in pre-colonial times, fared under colonization. The missionaries arrived with fire and book, with laws and swords. And suddenly, what was sacred became sin. What was powerful became perverse. The Babaylan were called witches. The Bisu were mocked, outlawed, driven underground. The winked were silenced. The echoes of those wounds remain. You can hear them even now in the way modern tongues hesitate to speak of third genders, of sacred queerness, of transformation that isn't costume but calling. But not all was lost. In some places, the old ways endured. Quietly. In backrooms and forest edges and whispered stories. And now, in our time, they rise again. People reclaiming not just their gender identities, but their roles. Their roots. Understanding that what was once called deviance was often divinity in disguise. Because when you stand outside of society's rules, whether through madness, illness, vision, or gender, you become a mirror. And society will either break you, or learn from you. The shaman, in all their forms, chose the latter. They walked alone, danced alone, drank the bitter brew alone, and returned with truth no one else could bear. So now, standing here in the flicker of the fire, you see them differently. The robe of feathers and bone, the painted skin, the strange, melodic voice. This is not cross-dressing. This is not rebellion. This is a ritual state. A spiritual technology. A way of becoming large enough to carry what others cannot. And when they speak, it is with the voices of both moon and sun, of both hunter and hunted, of both mother and storm. They are not man, not woman. They are threshold incarnate. And the spirits listen, because in the world behind the world, form means nothing. Only function. Only faith. Only fire. And the shaman, standing there between all things, burns brighter than any boundary we've ever built. But in the morning, the fire will cool, and others will come. Strangers. With different tongues. With steel. With flags. With judgment dressed in uniform and cross. They will not understand what they see, and they will try to erase it. That is where we go next, into the long, violent silence. Into the forgetting. And the fight to remember. The fire still glows, faint now, but not yet gone. The shaman stands in the lingering smoke, robed, silent, watching the horizon where strangers are coming. You feel it, don't you? That shift in the air, the hum of something not sacred, but sharp. Boots will trample where bare feet once danced. And the spirits, they will not be invited. Let us walk into that storm together. The first sign wasn't swords. It was silence. A stillness that came when the drums were hushed, when the chants were no longer heard echoing through the hills. It came with ships, wide-bellied, pale-sailed monsters that slid over the horizon like dreams turned wrong. And from those ships came men. Not spirits. Not gods. But colonizers, missionaries, merchants, soldiers, carrying steel in one hand and scripture in the other. They saw the shaman, and they did not see a healer, a guide, a bridge. They saw a threat. Because the shaman did not kneel, did not obey, did not need their gods. And so the fires were targeted. It began with names. In Spanish, bruja, witch. In English, sorcerer, devil worker, heathen. In French, savage. The colonizers pointed and condemned. What they didn't understand, they rebranded as evil. The rituals? Devil's work. The herbs? Poison. The trances? Possession by demons. And those who tried to explain were mocked or tortured until they stopped speaking. In the Americas, the process was swift and brutal. Catholic priests tore down totem poles, burned ritual items, whipped children for speaking in their native tongue. Entire generations were taught to forget. In Canada, the residential schools took Indigenous children from their homes, shaved their heads, renamed them, forbade their ceremonies. In Peru and Brazil, ayahuasca use was declared barbaric. Shamans were imprisoned or beaten. The jungle was not a sacred place anymore, it was property. Resources? And the spirits? They were obstacles to be cleared. In Africa, colonial powers outlawed native medicine. Traditional healers, once respected figures, were labeled criminals. European doctors arrived, dismissing centuries of knowledge as superstition. The Nana and Babalaos were pushed underground. Their spirits renamed, hidden inside the saints of Christianity. Ogun became Saint George. Eladwa became Saint Anthony. The shrines remained, but in disguise. A mask to keep the ancestors alive. In Asia, similar stories played out. In the Philippines, Babaylan were hunted. Their ceremonies outlawed. The Spanish saw their gender fluidity, their authority, their independence, and crushed it. In Siberia, Soviet Russia declared shamanism illegal. Drums were confiscated. Sacred texts destroyed. Shamans disappeared into gulags. Their names erased from history. Only whispers remained. And yet, despite all of this, the fire did not go out. It flickered. But it burned. Because the spirits do not forget. And neither do those who carry them. The resistance took many forms. Sometimes quiet. A whispered chant before bed. A carved symbol hidden beneath clothing. A healing done in secret, under cover of night. Other times, open defiance. Ceremonies held anyway. Songs sung in forests. Drums played where no white man could hear. In Haiti, Vodou rose, not just as religion, but as rebellion. Spirits and ancestors guided revolutionaries in their fight against colonial rule. The sacred became weaponized. The dance was not just ritual, it was resistance. In South America, ayahuasca never vanished. The shamans passed it down, apprentice to apprentice, mouth to ear. Some became Christian by day and shaman by night. They merged the teachings. Not compromised survival. In North America, the ghost dance movement emerged, a pan-tribal spiritual uprising, a vision of a world where the ancestors returned and the invaders vanished. It terrified the U.S. government. They massacred those who danced it. But the dream lived on. Even in the Soviet Union, when the state declared, "There is no soul," shamans remembered. They buried their drums. They carved memories into wood and passed them on as stories. They waited. And when the regime collapsed, they dug up the drums and played them again. Because you can burn a book. You can break a drum. But you cannot kill the calling. The shaman is not just a person. It is a pattern. A response to human need. The need to understand pain. To speak to death. To find balance in a world that always tilts. And so, despite centuries of persecution, they returned. Sometimes in new forms. Sometimes with scars. But they returned. You see it now, don't you? That this wasn't just a battle for culture. It was a battle for the right to speak to the invisible. To own your own sacredness. The colonizers tried to control the soul. The shamans reminded us that the soul belongs to no empire. And now, in our time, the fire rises again. Slowly. Carefully. There are still dangers, cultural theft, shallow imitation, fake gurus selling plastic wisdom, but there is also truth. There are still shamans. Real ones. Practicing. Healing. Carrying stories that survived the fire. And so we return. Not to the past, but to the echo of it. To the part that refused to die. To the song that kept humming in the bones of the earth. Because the world tried to silence the shamans. But silence, too, can be sacred. And from it, the chant is rising again. But we must tread carefully. Because the fire that once almost died is sacred. And it still remembers. The fire is no longer just behind us now. It's around us again, rising slowly, defiantly, carrying both memory and possibility. The drums that were silenced now murmur on city streets, in retreat centers, in whispered songs passed across generations. But what does it mean to be a shaman now? In a world of glowing screens and concrete, who carries the bones, the breath, the vision? Let's walk forward, through the ash and the internet, into the strange new world where old spirits still speak. The city hums like a hive, cars buzzing, neon flickering, the low thrum of electricity everywhere. You wouldn't expect to find a shaman here. No drums. No forest. No carved bone charms hanging from doorways. But listen closely. Beneath the engine noise and glowing screens, there's a different kind of beat. Not a drum, but a heartbeat. Not a chant, but a breath held a little longer than usual. In yoga studios, in underground gatherings, in sweat lodges on reclaimed land, in therapy rooms lined with crystals and incense, the role of the shaman is waking again. But it's complicated. Because today's world is no longer rooted in tribe and land the way it once was. Many of us are cut off, from our ancestors, from our languages, from the plants that once grew at our feet. The village is gone. The spirits are quieter, or harder to hear. So modern shamans, true ones, must navigate a shattered world. A world where colonialism tried to erase everything, but also where spiritual hunger runs deeper than ever. People ache for meaning, for healing, for connection to something bigger than algorithms and bank accounts. Some shamans today are descendants of those who kept the fire alive. They were raised with the chants, the plants, the sacred tools hidden in plain sight. They learned the old languages not from books, but from elders whose memories lived in rhythm. These are not reenactors. They are continuations. When they sing, it is not revival. It is return. Others come to the path through pain, just like the old ones. They fall sick. They lose everything. They hear voices. They see visions. And instead of being medicated into silence, they are guided toward healing through spirit. These modern initiates may not live in huts. They may carry iPhones. But the call is the same. They are cracked open by life, remade by suffering, and brought to the edge where the spirit world begins. But here's where the path gets thorny. Because there are also pretenders. The marketplace is full of shamanic experiences, offered at $299 a weekend. There are influencers draped in feathers, quoting half-remembered chants, selling soul journeys like souvenirs. Some mean well. Others mean profit. And both can be dangerous. Because this work, true shamanic work, is not safe. Not clean. Not glamorous. It requires sacrifice, integrity, accountability, and above all, respect. Real shamans don't advertise. They're found, called, sometimes reluctantly. So how do you tell the difference? You watch how they live. A real shaman listens more than they speak. They don't claim power, they carry responsibility. They don't center themselves. They serve the community, even when that community is fractured and searching. They speak with the dead not to impress, but to heal. They enter trance not for entertainment, but because someone is in pain. In the Amazon, some ayahuasqueros have opened their doors to the world, but not without cost. Tourists arrive with expectations, wallets, trauma, and little understanding. Some shamans refuse them. Others adapt, offering ceremonies but insisting on preparation, humility, and long integration afterward. Still others are exploited, offering sacred work for profit while being underpaid, misunderstood, and sometimes reduced to spectacle. In North America, indigenous communities are rebuilding sacred practices that were almost lost, fighting both internalized shame and external judgment. The sweat lodge, the sun dance, the ghost dance, all rising again. Carefully, prayerfully, often in private. Because too many outsiders watched with curiosity but no commitment, took without giving, spoke without listening. And yet, the hunger remains. People from all walks of life, urban and rural, rich and poor, old and young, are seeking something shamanic, a way to heal, to feel, to find the soul again in a world that's lost its story. Some turn to plant medicine, others to dreams, some to drumming, others to cold rivers and long fasts. And somewhere, always, there is a guide, a person who walks a little differently, who listens a little longer, who says the thing that cuts through your fear and touches the truth. That is the modern shaman. Not a brand, not a fantasy, but a witness to suffering, to silence, to the space between all things. Sometimes they're therapists blending ancestral wisdom with trauma work. Sometimes they're artists who paint what they see in vision. Sometimes they're activists fighting for land and memory and justice. And sometimes they're still the ones living on the edge of the village, or the city, or the algorithm, watching the smoke rise and waiting for the dream to speak. And the spirits? They're still here. Waiting. Watching. Ready to guide, if we're ready to honor. But even now, even with this return, something remains mysterious. Something just out of reach. Because no matter how much we study, record, imitate, or reclaim, some truths stay behind the veil. The final veil. The one we must approach gently. Because next, we must speak of what we may never fully understand. Of the unsolved riddles. The visions no words can hold. The mystery that made shamans shiver and smile. The path now turns inward, soft beneath your feet, wrapped in fog. We've walked through fire, through trance, through centuries of memory and forgetting. But now, we reach the threshold no map can chart. The place where language falters, and the drumbeat slows, not from fatigue, but reverence. This is where even the shaman bows their head. Because some things are not meant to be fully known. They are only meant to be felt. The shaman sits again by the fire, older than when we first saw them. Not by years, but by weight. The weight of visions, of voices that weren't theirs, of names spoken in sleep. Their eyes aren't tired, though. They're distant. Like they're still half there, still watching something we can't see. And perhaps they are. Because there are places the shaman goes that don't come back with words. There are moments in their journey that even they don't understand, not fully. And that's where we go now, into the misty corners of the sacred. Into the things left unsaid. You see, no matter how much we study shamans, anthropologists with their notebooks, seekers with their questions, tourists with their eager hands, some truths slip through. We can describe the ritual, record the chant, even measure the chemicals coursing through the brain during trance. But the experience? The inner terrain of the shaman during the peak of their vision? That remains a secret kept by the soul. Not because they're hiding it, but because it's untranslatable. What do you call the feeling of becoming a bird and remembering you once flew before you were born? How do you explain the moment a mountain whispers your name in a voice made of wind and regret? What language do you use to describe touching a god who had your face? Shamans often speak in metaphor. They say, "I traveled down a rope into the earth," or, "I was eaten by a snake and came out the other side." But we make a mistake when we assume these are just symbols. What if that's exactly what they experienced? What if, in that state, whether induced by plants, fasting, rhythm, or madness, the mind opens not just to imagination, but to something beyond it? Some neuroscientists argue that shamanic experiences are just brain states, hallucinations born of oxygen deprivation or psychedelics or trauma. But even they admit, these states are strangely coherent. The visions have structure. The stories recur across continents. The same tunnels. The same spirits. The same three-tiered worlds. The same messages: balance, sacrifice, humility, connection. It's as if humanity, across all its cultures, has been touching the same vast, pulsing mystery, and describing it in the only way we know how, through myth, through metaphor, through the trembling hands of the shaman. And then there are the miracles. The healing science can't quite explain. The way a shaman sings over a wound and it closes. Or names a disease before symptoms appear. Or sees a dead relative standing behind someone, whispering things no outsider could know. Not tricks. Not performance. These stories repeat too often, across too many cultures, to be dismissed entirely. Something is happening. Something real. And yet, we cannot pin it down. Even the shamans themselves don't always claim to understand. Many speak of being vessels, not authors. "I don't know why I said it," one Siberian Noidi once told an ethnographer. "The spirit said it through me." Another shaman in Peru, after guiding a ceremony, simply shrugged and said, "I only see the shadow of the truth. The rest is smoke." And that's the thing. The shaman walks not with certainty, but with relationship. They don't claim to own the truth. They dance with it. Respect it. Let it move through them. They are not scientists collecting data. They are dreamers interacting with mystery. And sometimes, mystery answers back. There are patterns that haunt the edges of shamanic lore. The same beings, often described as tall, luminous, half-human creatures with deep, emotionless eyes, appear in both ayahuasca visions and Inuit trance journeys. How is that possible? Separated by oceans, by language, by time, and yet the same face, the same presence. Are these archetypes? Shared psychic symbols? Or are they something else? And then there are the messages. Over and over, shamans return from their journeys with warnings about balance, about forgetting the earth, about the dangers of too much pride. They say we are cutting the roots of the sky, one Amazonian shaman told a Western visitor. And if the roots go, the sky will fall. Another from West Africa said, the ancestors are angry because the living have stopped listening. We dismiss these as poetic metaphors. But perhaps they are not. Perhaps they are exactly what they seem to be, warnings from a consciousness older than ours. Not moralistic. Just observing. Waiting. And here, we must face a final, uncomfortable truth. The shaman's world is not safe. It is not sanitized. It is not all love and light. The spirit realm is vast and filled with wonder, yes, but also trickery, darkness, madness. There are spirits who lie, who punish, who test. The shaman walks a dangerous path, not because they seek danger, but because that's where the knowledge lives. And not all of them come back whole. Some lose their way. Some never stop dreaming. Some speak truths no one wants to hear. And some are simply lost, consumed by the very mystery they tried to hold. So we must ask, why do they keep walking? Why do they return again and again to the fire? Perhaps it's because someone must. Because the world has always needed someone to touch the unknown and to return, not with answers, but with the right questions. Because even if we never fully understand what the shaman sees, we are better for knowing that someone is still looking. And that, perhaps, is the greatest mystery of all. That there are still those among us, quietly, humbly, often in solitude, who close their eyes, enter the dark, and carry back a sliver of the dream. Not for themselves, but for us. And for the world that still, somehow, believes in more. But before we leave the circle, there is one last thing to say. One last story. One final breath in this long, strange journey. Because while the rituals end, and the fire fades, the echoes never stop. We've wandered far, through spirit realms and silence, through sickness and song, through sacrifice, forgetting, and the smoke-wrapped edge of mystery. But now, here at the end, we turn to what remains. What survives. The embers that still glow after the fire burns low. Because though the chant has faded, though the shaman walks away into the trees, their echo lingers. And if you listen closely, you can still hear it in the bones of the world. The night is quiet now. Not silent, never truly silent, but heavy with a stillness that feels earned. The fire is almost gone, its last few embers glowing like the eyes of something watching gently from the dark. You can feel the heat on your skin, faint and fading, but steady. Across from you, the shaman is gone. Not vanished, just left. Back to the threshold they came from. And for the first time, you realize something strange. They never told you their name. And it doesn't matter. Because the shaman is not one person. The shaman is a shape in the smoke. A shadow on the wall of the cave. A rhythm that repeats itself across time. And they're still with us, even when we don't see them. You find their fingerprints everywhere. In medicine and in myth. In psychotherapy and in ceremony. In stories whispered by grandmothers. In songs hummed by children without knowing why. The language may change, the feathers may fall away, but the function remains. Because the shaman's legacy is not just in what they did, but in what they represented. A way of being. A way of listening to the world as if it were alive. Modern science, for all its brilliance, now circles truths the shamans whispered millennia ago. The gut holds memory. Plants carry intelligence. Trauma shapes the body. Dreams are doorways. We say these things now with charts and scans and peer-reviewed journals, but the shamans knew. They knew from the inside. From the body. From the spirit. From watching a leaf fall in a certain way and feeling the shift of something larger. And they passed it down, not through books, but through presence. Through ritual. through fire. Even now, there are moments when their wisdom surfaces, uninvited. A parent sings a lullaby with no idea it's the echo of a prayer sung in a cave 10,000 years ago. A stranger has a dream that saves their life. A child speaks to an imaginary friend, and somehow knows things they shouldn't. These are not coincidences. They are ripples. Signs that the thread was never fully cut. In our art, too, the shaman lingers. In the hero's journey, we always meet the guide, the wise figure on the edge of society, half mad, half divine, who gives the gift, the warning, the map. They are Gandalf. They are Yoda. They are the witch in the woods, the old man by the fire, the voice in the dream. Every story carries the shaman in its bones, whether we name them or not. And in healing work, their tools return: drumming, breath work, plant medicine, ritual. Some are rediscovered through research. Others re-emerge from the people who carried them all along. But always, they come back with a warning: this is sacred. Not because it's old. Not because it's exotic. But because it is powerful. And power, in the wrong hands, burns. So what do we do with this legacy? We don't steal it. We honor it. We listen to the people who never forgot. To the cultures that survived colonization with their stories intact. To the elders who still know how to call the rain. We learn, not just the forms, but the ethics. The humility. The listening that comes before the speaking. The fasting that comes before the vision. Because the shaman's path was never about ego. Never about selling enlightenment or collecting followers. It was about service. Suffering. Mystery. They walked where others couldn't, and they returned carrying something fragile and strange and vital. And they gave it away. Not for money. Not for fame. But because they had to. Because the spirits demanded it. Because someone was sick, or lost, or broken, and the only medicine was a truth spoken by someone who had died and come back. And that's what the legacy really is. Not feathers or chants or rituals performed in the right order, but courage. The courage to go into the dark. To walk alone. To be laughed at. To be feared. To be forgotten. And still to return, over and over, to the fire. That's the echo that matters. The one that doesn't end when the drum stops. So perhaps the question now isn't whether the shaman still lives among us. Perhaps the question is whether you hear the call. It won't sound like a voice. It might feel like a sickness that won't heal, or a dream you can't forget, or a silence that grows louder every time you ignore it. It might come as grief, as madness, as a longing for something you can't name. And if it does, don't run. Don't numb it. Listen. Sit by the fire. Breathe. Let the old story rise. Because the world is still full of wounds. And the drum is still beating. Somewhere, always, the shaman returns. Not for themselves, but for us. And so, as the night settles, may these echoes of the past guide you gently into dreams. Let the fire dim now. Let the smoke rise. Let the silence deepen. You've walked far. You've seen much. And somewhere in that quiet space between waking and sleep, maybe you'll hear it. The beat of the drum, soft as a heartbeat, calling you not to remember, but to become.